Anna. Thanks for joining me today for a new video. I love a good interactive card, and when I saw the new Avery Elle Barnyard Boogie stamp and die set, I knew I wanted to make one of these critters dance. Because who doesn't do a happy dance when it's your birthday, right? So today I'm going to use this adorable stamp set and the coordinating dies to make my card project. I've also pulled out this Simple Things pattern paper collection from Pinkfresh Studios. I really was inspired by the colors in this paper, and I thought the whimsical style would go really nice with these animals. Now, at the time that I was making this card, I wasn't sure which paper I was going to use, so when I went to work on the coloring, I was actually going to use the paper as my guide. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So what I'm doing right now is I'm stamping my critters onto some Hammermill white cardstock with Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. And I chose both of these products because they are great for Copic coloring. The Hammermill paper works really well with blending your Copic markers. And of course the Intense Black ink is a nice safe ink to use that gives you a really nice black image. I wanted to use the pattern paper as my guide for the coloring. So when I picked out the colors like the pink for the pig, I was using a little bit more of a bluer pink because I saw that color in the pattern paper. Same with the yellow. I used teal for the sheep just to bring in some more of that color that was in the paper. And then I also used some orange for the sunflowers to color in the centers. When you are making a card project and you're using pattern paper, it's always helpful to look at the colors in the paper that you're going to be using to give you a good guide, because then you know your images are going to work very cohesively with the paper. Now, of course, adding neutrals is going to work with almost anything, so I did use some grays in the cool tones for coloring in the cow, and then for the sheep to color in his face and his legs, I did use a light warm Copic brown. I'm going to use the coordinating dies to cut my images out, and I'm holding them in place with our Simon Says Stamp very, very low tack tape. This is a really nice tape for holding your dies in place and also stencils. But what's really great about it is because it's a very gentle tape, it won't tear your images when you peel the tape off. And so that way you can still make sure your dies are held in place, but you won't damage your coloring or stamping. So now I'm going to start assembling my critters onto the pattern paper I've selected. I'm going to use foam squares to attach all of my critters, and I'm going to use different heights of squares to be able to get some depth. So for instance, the little goose here that I'm attaching onto the card first, I used 2 foam squares to attach him down because he's in front of the cow. Then I used a single layer of foam squares on the cow to attach him. And finally, the little flowers, because they're all the way in the back, I used thin 3D foam squares for that. Now the sheep is going to get layered behind the pig, who's going to be on top of our action wobble. So I'm only going to put a foam square behind his head, and then I'm actually going to glue his body down onto the pattern paper. I also glued one of the flowers onto the arm of the pig, so that way it looks like he's holding it, and so then when he's dancing, the flower will go with him. And so to make sure that my action wobble gets fully adhered down onto this card project, this is where I glued the body of the sheep directly onto the pattern paper with some liquid glue, and then I stuck the action wobble on top of that area. And that's going to get a really nice strong bond onto everything. I can peel off the release paper from the other side of the spring so that I can glue this down onto my pig. And now my pig is going to be adhered to the spring, which will allow him to jiggle and wiggle and dance, which I think is so much fun and really adds some movement to this card project. To accent my card and also bring in more of that orange color, I did trim some orange cardstock down using a scallop frame die that I had in my stash, and I just created little border strips from that. And then I'll glue those borders along the top and bottom of my pattern paper. I'm not going to do anything on the sides. I just wanted a little extra color here and also trim things up a bit. So I'll do that to both of those strips that I have created here, and I just used craft tacky glue to adhere these down on the back side of my pattern paper. Now this is going to get layered up on top of an A7 card. We have pre-made A7 card bases, which are 5x7, at our Simon Says Stamp store, which is what I'm using here, and I have those linked below in the video description, along with all the other supplies that I'm using today. We're working on our sentiment now at this point, so I've prepped the surface of some black cardstock with our Simon powder tool, and I'm going to ink up this greeting from the Barnyard Boogie stamp set with some embossing ink, and then I can sprinkle white embossing powder on top of that so I get a really nice bright white greeting on this black cardstock. I always like to heat the back side of my paper first though before I bring the heat to the front. That just gives me a cleaner embossing, and it also helps with the paper warping. I did trim this sentiment down into a small little strip using my Tim Holtz mini trimmer, and then I'm going to go ahead and pop this up along the bottom of my card. I used black 3D foam squares for this, which will hide nicely behind that black cardstock and you'll never see them. That balances everything out and gives a nice grounding point for this card. But the last thing I needed to do was add some confetti because they're dancing and they're having a party, so you gotta have confetti, right? Well, here I used these little leaf images from the stamp set, and I stamped a whole bunch of them, colored them with the same green that I used to color in the leaves of the flowers, and then I just glued these around my card, creating that really fun confetti-like feel. And of course, because the pig wiggles and jiggles, that makes the card even more fun and really accentuates that party feel that we're trying to get with this card project. This card just makes me smile. It reminds me of something from a children's storybook. If I remember correctly, I think the story was Barnyard Dance. It's a really cute book for children and has such a fun and catchy storyline. This card would make pretty much anybody smile, and I think it is such a fun way to use these new products from Avery Elle's newest collection. Like I said, if you're interested in any of the products that I did use today, you can find them all down below in the video description and over on the blog. Be sure to give this video a big thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks so much for watching, friends. I will see you again soon and have a fabulous day.
Hi there, I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at simonsaysstamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.